My wife called me a stupid electrician and signed the divorce papers. Then she saw me on the news. I was sitting in my truck at the gas station on Route 9, watching rain hammer the windshield like it had a personal grudge against glass. The wipers were going back and forth, but I wasn't turning the key, wasn't heading home. Not yet. You know that feeling when you're 52 years old, and you realize your marriage sounds exactly like the refrigerator in your garage? The one that hums too loud, sucks up electricity like it's going out of style. But when you open up, there's nothing inside worth keeping. Yeah, that was me and Elaine. 25 years of that hum. The thing is, I'm an electrician. Have been for 30 years. I notice things. Voltage drops. Loose connections. Circuits that don't quite add up. And lately, the circuit in my house had been running hot in all the wrong places. Elaine had been inviting Gavin over. A lot. 3, maybe 4 times a week for the past 2 months. Gavin was our financial advisor. Or that's what his business card said. Insurance agent, investment consultant. The guy who supposedly helped regular folks like us plan for retirement. He drove a silver Lexus that was always waxed to a mirror shine, wore suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and had teeth so white they could guide ships to shore in a storm. Officially, Gavin was helping us refinance the house, restructure our retirement accounts, optimize our tax situation. All those fancy words that sound important when someone in a $2,000 suit says them while sitting at your kitchen table. Unofficially, I noticed things. I noticed how Elaine started wearing makeup on days Gavin was coming over. She'd been wearing the same ratty bathrobe until noon for the past 5 years. But suddenly she was in nice blouses and jeans that actually fit. Hair done. Perfume. The works. I noticed how Gavin looked at her when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Not the way you look at a client. The way you look at something you want to own. And I noticed how they both got real quiet real fast whenever I walked into a room. Papers would shuffle. Calculators would appear. Business faces would snap into place like masks at a masquerade ball. But here's the thing about electricians. We're paid to see what's hidden. We look behind walls. We trace problems back to their source. We know that when a light flickers, it's not the bulb, it's the connection. And the connection between my wife and our financial advisor was running a whole lot hotter than any retirement planning session had a right to run. I rubbed my eyes. The headache that had been building all day was now hammering against my skull like it wanted out. I flipped down the sun visor, looking for the bottle of Advil I kept clipped there. That's when it fell out. A lottery ticket. Powerball. Crumpled, faded, 6 months old. I stared at it for a second, and the memory hit me like a voltage surge. Our 25th wedding anniversary. 6 months ago. I'd made reservations at that Italian place Elaine used to love, the one with the candles and wine bottles and the pictures of Naples on the walls. Spent a week's worth of overtime pay on a necklace I'd seen her looking at in a jewelry store window. She forgot. Not forgot like she mixed up the date. Forgot like it didn't matter. She had a client meeting that ran late. She'd said, "So sorry, we'd celebrate another time. Maybe next week." Next week never came. I'd sat in the parking lot of that Italian restaurant. Reservation for 2, nobody in the passenger seat. Watched other couples walk in holding hands. Watched them walk out an hour later, laughing, alive, connected. Then I drove to a gas station, bought a Powerball ticket with the last $20 in my wallet, and thought about hope, about the odds, about how sometimes life just hands you a losing hand, and there's nothing you can do but play it out. I'd shoved the ticket behind the visor and forgotten about it. Until now. My phone was in my hand before I even thought about it. I opened the lottery app, hands shaking just a little, probably from the headache. That's what I told myself. I scanned the barcode. The screen went green. Not just green. Nuclear reactor core green. Emergency exit sign green. The kind of green that makes your brain stop working for a second because it's trying to process something that doesn't make sense. $184 million. I stared at those numbers like they were written in a foreign language. The ticket was a winner, had been a winner, for 6 months. And nobody knew. My hands weren't shaking from the headache anymore. Then I saw the text at the bottom of the screen. Red letters. Bold. The kind of warning you can't unsee. Claim by Friday 5 p.m. My throat went dry. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped electrical tape around my ribs and pulled it tight. This wasn't just information. This wasn't just a helpful reminder. This was a countdown. A timer. 48 hours before $184 million evaporated like water on hot pavement. It was Wednesday. Friday at 5 p.m. After that, the money went back into the pot. Gone. Like it never existed. I sat there in my truck, rain drumming on the roof, holding a piece of paper worth more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. And all I could think about was Gavin's smile, Elaine's new blouses, the way they went quiet when I came home, the way the refrigerator hummed. I started the truck, put it in drive, headed home on autopilot while my brain tried to catch up with my eyes. The thing about money, the real thing nobody tells you, is that it doesn't solve problems. It reveals them, like turning on a floodlight in a room you thought was clean and seeing all the dust and cobwebs and cracks in the foundation. This ticket wasn't going to fix my marriage. It was going to show me exactly how broken it already was. I turned on to Maple Street. Our house was the fourth one on the left. Blue shutters, white trim, two-car garage that I'd rewired myself 3 years ago, lawn that needed mowing, American Dream in vinyl siding, and parked in the driveway, right next to Elaine's Honda, was Gavin's silver Lexus. Another consultation, another optimization session, another afternoon of my wife and the man with the perfect teeth discussing our financial future. I pulled up to the curb across the street, didn't pull into the driveway, didn't get out, just sat there, engine idling, watching rain run down the windshield in rivers. Most men would have stormed in right then, kicked down the door, demanded answers, made a scene worthy of daytime television. But I'm an electrician. I troubleshoot. I verify. I test before I cut the power. I pulled out my phone again. This time I opened a different app. The one most people don't even know exists on their phones. The smart home system. See, 2 years ago I'd upgraded our whole house. New smoke detectors with integrated carbon monoxide sensors, motion sensor lights, smart thermostat, the works. I'd installed it all myself, naturally. Save us $1,500 in contractor fees. What I didn't tell Elaine was that the smoke detectors I'd chosen had microphones, 4 voice-activated alerts, according to Box, for listening to every room in the house, according to the admin panel that only I had access to. I'd never used it, never even thought about using it. The password had been sitting in my phone for 2 years dormant and used. I'd installed the system because I'm thorough, because I like knowing our house was protected, because that's what good husbands do. Funny how things work out. I logged into the admin panel, selected the kitchen, turned on the audio feed. For about 10 seconds, I heard nothing but the hum of the refrigerator, that same refrigerator. Then I heard Gavin's voice, and it wasn't the voice he used when I was in the room. It wasn't professional, wasn't distant. It was intimate, warm, the way you talk to someone when you're close to them, real close. He said, "Sweetheart, just hold on one more week. We'll get him to sign over the retirement account transfer. I'll frame it as tax optimization, maybe throw in something about avoiding penalties. He trusts every word I say about inflation and interest rates. Guy doesn't know a 401k from a 4x4. Once that money's moved into the joint account we control, you file for divorce. Clean, simple. We take everything." The rain kept falling. The wipers kept moving. My hand kept holding the phone, even though every part of me wanted to throw it through the windshield. Elaine laughed. I heard her laugh. That same laugh I fell in love with 26 years ago at a 4th of July barbecue, when she'd accidentally knocked potato salad onto my shirt and thought it was the funniest thing in the world. That laugh. She said, "God, he's so stupid, Gavin. Yesterday, he actually asked me if we should wait to refinance because rates might drop. I just nodded and told him you'd handle it. He believes everything, every single word." That's when something in my chest went cold. Not hot, not angry. Cold, like a breaker had flipped and cut power to a whole section of my body. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just betrayal. This was robbery. This was a con. This was my wife and her financial advisor boyfriend planning to strip me down to nothing and leave me on the side of the road like a stolen car with the copper wiring ripped out. And they thought I was too stupid to see it coming. I could have gone in right then, could have confronted them, could have played the recording for Elaine and watched her face when she realized I knew, could have punched Gavin's perfect teeth down his throat and felt that satisfying crunch of knuckles on enamel. But here's what would have happened next. Lawyers, divorce proceedings, asset freezes, court orders, everything locked down while judges decided who got what. Months of legal warfare, maybe years. And that lottery ticket? It had 46 hours left. Not months, not years, hours. If I started a divorce right now, that ticket would get frozen with everything else. Marital property, subject to division, half to her, maybe more if she had a good lawyer. And Gavin probably knew all the best lawyers. Or worse, the ticket would expire while we fought over who got to claim it. And Elaine and Gavin would end up with the house, the retirement accounts, and everything else they'd planned to take anyway. I'd be left with nothing, not even the satisfaction of revenge. So I sat there in my truck, watching rain fall on a silver Lexus, and I made a decision. I was going to play this smart. I was going to be the stupid electrician. They thought I was the guy who didn't know a 401k from a 4x4, the guy who trusted every word about inflation. And I was going to take everything. I turned off the engine, pocketed my phone, grabbed a lottery ticket, and held it like it was made of nitroglycerin. Then I got out of the truck and walked through the rain to my garage. Not the house, the garage, side entrance, the one that opens into my workspace where I keep my tools, my spare parts, my wire spools, and all the equipment that's kept this family fed for 30 years. In the back corner, covered in dust and oil stains, was an old capacitor from a job I'd done on a commercial freezer unit 5 years ago. 30 pounds of metal and ceramic, ugly as sin, covered in warning labels about electrical shock and toxic materials. Nobody ever touched it. Nobody ever looked at it. It just sat there like a piece of industrial art that only I understood. I unscrewed the maintenance panel on the side. Inside was empty space, maybe 6 inches deep. Room for wiring, room for connection points, room for a lottery ticket. I slid the ticket inside, closed the panel, wiped my fingerprints off the screws, even though I knew I was being paranoid. Then I found an old danger sign, the kind with the lightning bolt in the skull, and zip-tied it to the front of the capacitor. Danger, high voltage, do not touch, perfect. I stood there for a minute, looking at that capacitor. $184 million hidden inside something that looked like it might explode if you sneezed on it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Then I walked through the garage to the door that led into the house. I stood there for a second, hand on the knob, and I thought about what I was about to do. Thought about walking in there and pretending I didn't know. Pretending I was still the stupid husband. The guy who believed every word about optimization and inflation. I could do this. I'd been doing it for months already, hadn't I? What was a few more days? I opened the door and walked down the hallway toward the kitchen. Made sure my footsteps were loud. Made sure they had time to hear me coming. When I stepped into the kitchen, it was like watching a play. Elaine and Gavin were sitting at the table, but there was about 3 feet of space between them now. Gavin had a calculator in front of him. Elaine had a stack of papers. Both of them looked up with perfectly composed faces. Smiles. Professional. Appropriate. If I hadn't heard what I'd heard 5 minutes ago, I might have believed it. Gavin stood up, extending his hand like we were old friends. That smile. Those teeth. He said something about going over some paperwork. Making sure everything was optimized for tax season. Try and get ahead of the game. I shook his hand. Felt how soft it was. No calluses. No scars. No evidence of a single day of real work. I said, "Hey, Gavin, saving our money again?" He laughed. That easy, confident laugh of a man who thought he was the smartest person in the room. He said something about trying his best, about how times were tough, about how important it was to have a solid financial strategy in an uncertain economy. I nodded along, played the part, the tired electrician who just wanted someone else to handle the complicated stuff, the husband who trusted his wife, the client who believed every word. I looked at Elaine. She smiled at me, that same smile she'd given me for 25 years, the one that used to mean something. Then I looked at Gavin, still smiling, still confident, still thinking he was running the show. And I said, "Yeah, you're right, Gavin. Times are tough. It's all about knowing when to cut your losses, right?" Gavin's smile flickered for just a second, like a light bulb with a loose connection. Then it came back full strength. He probably thought I was talking about bad investments, about selling stocks at the right time, about being smart with money. He had no idea I was talking about cutting him and Elaine out of my life like a dead circuit. He nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly, Mark. Exactly. You have to know when to walk away from a losing position." I smiled back. The kind of smile you give someone when you're holding all the cards and they don't even know the game has started. You have no idea how right you are. The refrigerator hummed in the background, same as always. But the circuit had changed. The power was flowing in a whole new direction. And neither of them had any idea what was about to hit them. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't sleep. Didn't want to. My brain was running on all cylinders like an engine redlining in neutral, burning fuel, but going nowhere. Elaine was upstairs in our bedroom, probably texting Gavin about how smoothly their little consultation had gone. How stupid I was. How easy this was all going to be. I was in the garage. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that 60 cycle buzz that most people don't even notice but that I've been hearing for 30 years. The workbench was covered in wire strippers, voltage testers, and rolls of electrical tape in 6 different colors. Tools that had built a life. Tools that were about to tear one apart. I fired up my old laser printer, the same one I'd been using to print invoices and job estimates since 2008. It wheezed and groaned like it was personally offended at being woken up at 2 in the morning. The warm-up cycle took forever. I stood there, arms crossed, watching the ready light blink, and I thought about something my dad used to say. He'd been an electrician, too. Taught me everything. He used to tell me that the difference between a good electrician and a great one wasn't how fast you could wire a panel. It was how well you could read the system. Know what's supposed to happen. Know what's actually happening. Know where the problem is before you even touch a wire. I've been reading this system for months. Elaine, Gavin, the way the current flowed between them. And now I was about to redirect that current straight back into their faces. The printer finally came to life. I opened my laptop and started typing. I'm not a lawyer. Never claimed to be, but I've worked on enough commercial jobs to know what legal documents look like. The letterhead, the formatting, the tone, that specific brand of aggressive professionalism that attorneys use when they want to scare the living daylights out of you before you even read past the first paragraph. I'd done electrical work for a law firm once. Big corporate outfit downtown. They'd stiff me on the final payment. Took 3 months and 2 threatening letters before I got my money. But I kept copies of those letters. Studied them. The way they structured sentences. The words they chose. Liable, damages, pursuant, forthwith. Words that sound important even when you're not entirely sure what they mean. I pulled up Google. Searched for aggressive law firms in the tri-state area. Found one called Whitmore & Associates. Big firm. 100 lawyers. Corporate litigation. The kind of place that bills $500 an hour just to answer the phone. Perfect. I recreated their letterhead. Close enough to pass a quick glance, but not so perfect that anyone could prove I'd actually stolen it. Changed a few numbers in the address. Tweaked the font slightly. Made it look like it had been printed on expensive paper, and then scanned as a PDF. Then I started writing. Demand letter and notice of liability. To Mark Sullivan, Sullivan Electrical Contracting. Commercial fire at ChemCorp Industrial Storage Facility. Incident date October 12th. Dear Mr. Sullivan, this firm represents ChemCorp Industries LLC in connection with a catastrophic fire that occurred at their industrial storage facility on October 12th of this year. Our investigation has determined that the fire originated in the main electrical panel, which was installed and certified by Sullivan Electrical Contracting in June of this year. I kept going, threw in technical terms, NFPA code violations, improper wire gauge selection, failure to install adequate circuit protection. The kind of stuff that sounds devastating if you don't know what it means. The kind of stuff that sounds even worse if you do. I made sure to emphasize the dollar amount. $2.5 million in damages, property loss, business interruption, potential environmental cleanup costs, and the magic word that makes every insurance company and financial advisor break out in a cold sweat: full contractor liability. I dated the letter 2 weeks ago, made it look like it had been sitting in a pile of mail, waiting to be noticed, gave it that authentic feel of a disaster that's been quietly brewing while you were living your normal life. The printer spat out 3 pages. I read them over twice, checking for typos, making sure the tone was right. Aggressive but professional. Terrifying but legitimate. The kind of letter that makes your stomach drop when you open the envelope. It was perfect. I printed a second copy, folded both sets, found an old manila envelope in my filing cabinet. The kind that certified mail comes in, addressed it to myself, put the letter inside. Then I took a lighter and singed the edges of the envelope just slightly. Made it look like it had been through the mail system. Given it character, age, authenticity. By the time I finished, the sky outside the garage window was starting to turn gray. That pre-dawn gray that isn't quite night anymore, but isn't day yet either. The in-between time. The time when you're either going to bed way too late or getting up way too early. I heard the house door open. Footsteps. Elaine coming down to start coffee. I shut off the printer, closed my laptop, slid the envelope into my work jacket pocket, sat down on my stool, and put my head in my hands like a man who'd been up all night worrying about something he couldn't fix, which, technically, I had been, just not the something she thought. By 7 a.m., Gavin's Lexus was back in the driveway. Of course it was. Elaine had texted him at 6:30. I'd watched her do it from the kitchen doorway, while I pretended to scramble eggs. Watched her thumb move across the screen. Watched her smile when he responded immediately. He was coming over to go through some paperwork before she headed to work. Some urgent financial documents that needed signatures. The audacity of it was almost impressive. He was in my house at 7 in the morning, sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee from my coffee maker, probably planning how they were going to spend my retirement money after they cleaned me out. I waited until they were settled, until Gavin had his laptop open and his calculator out and all his props arranged just right, until they both looked comfortable, confident, in control. Then I walked in. I'd been up for 29 hours straight, hadn't shaved, hadn't showered. I'd splashed cold water on my face and messed up my hair just right. Made myself look exactly like a man who'd spent the whole night staring at the ceiling, watching his life fall apart in slow motion. Method acting. That's what they call it in Hollywood. I walked into the kitchen, and they both looked up. Gavin had that smile ready. That professional, everything is fine smile. Elaine looked concerned, or at least she'd arranged her face into something that resembled concern. I didn't say anything, just reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the manila envelope, and dropped it on the table between them. It landed with a slap that was louder than it should have been in the quiet kitchen, like a judge's gavel, like a sentencing. Gavin looked at the envelope, then at me, then back at the envelope. He asked what it was. I told him it came by certified mail yesterday. Said I'd been too tired to open it when I got home. Said I'd finally looked at it around midnight. Said I hadn't slept since. Elaine picked up the envelope, looked at the return address. Whitmore and Associates, attorneys at law. Her face went pale. Not fake pale. Real pale. The kind of pale you can't manufacture. She asked what it was about. I didn't answer. Just nodded at the envelope. Told her to read it. She pulled out the letter. Gavin leaned over her shoulder. I watched their eyes move across the page. Left to right. Down. Left to right. Down. Saw the exact moment they hit the dollar amount because they both stopped breathing for a second $2.5 million. The kitchen got real quiet. Even the refrigerator seemed to stop humming, like the whole house was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Gavin read faster than Elaine. His financial advisor brain was scanning for keywords: liability, damages, full contractor responsibility. All the words that meant money. All the words that meant loss. Elaine looked up at me. Her eyes were wide. Scared, she asked if this was real. I told her it looked pretty real to me. Told her I'd tried calling the firm when I first read it, but their office didn't open until 9. Told her I didn't know what to do. Told her I was terrified, all of which was technically true. I had tried calling them. The number on my fake letterhead went to a disconnected line, but I'd tried, and I was terrified, just not of a lawsuit. Gavin sat back in his chair. He was sweating now, little beads forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning running full blast. He read the letter again, slower this time, looking for an angle, a way out, something that made this not as bad as it looked. But I'd written it too well. There was no angle, no way out, just a catastrophic financial disaster waiting to happen. Elaine turned to Gavin, asked him what this meant, what we should do, looking at him like he was the expert, the problem solver, the guy with all the answers. And Gavin, bless his greedy little heart, took the bait. He started explaining, told her that if ChemCorp filed suit, they'd go after everything: personal assets, business assets, bank accounts, the house. They'd freeze it all pending litigation. Could take years to resolve. Even if Mark won the case, the legal fees alone would bankrupt us. And if Mark lost, complete financial ruin. He was breathing faster now, getting worked up, and I realized why. Gavin wasn't worried about me. Gavin was worried about Gavin. See, he'd been skimming money from our accounts for months, moving it into investment vehicles that he controlled, probably taking a nice percentage off the top for his trouble. It was all carefully hidden behind complicated paperwork and financial terminology that sounded legitimate, but was really just theft with a business degree. But if lawyers came knocking, if auditors started looking at our finances, if someone actually examined where our retirement money had been going, they'd find Gavin's fingerprints all over everything. He'd go from financial advisor to financial criminal real fast. The kind of criminal that gets 5 to 10 in a federal facility where the other inmates don't take kindly to guys who steal from working families. So, yeah, Gavin was scared. Really scared. I let the silence hang there for a minute. Let them both stew in it. Let the weight of $2.5 million in liability sink into their bones. Then I said the words I'd been rehearsing all night. Quiet, defeated, broken. I told them I didn't want them to suffer because of my mistakes. Told Elaine that she'd been a good wife and didn't deserve to be dragged down by my failures. Told them I'd been thinking about it all night, and there was only one solution that made sense. Divorce. Immediate. Emergency. Today if possible. I said I'd take full responsibility for everything. The house would go to Elaine. All the assets would go to Elaine. Everything would be in her name only. That way, when the lawyers came after me, they couldn't touch her, couldn't touch anything that mattered. I'd fall on the sword. She'd be safe. Clean financial separation. It was the most noble, selfless, stupid thing anyone could possibly suggest. And I watched Gavin's eyes light up like a Christmas tree. He tried to hide it, tried to look sympathetic, concerned, but I saw it, that flash of pure greed, that moment when his brain recalculated everything and realized that this wasn't disaster. This was an opportunity. I was offering to hand them everything, gift-wrapped, free and clear. They wouldn't have to trick me into signing over the retirement accounts. Wouldn't have to wait. Wouldn't have to play the long game. I was doing their job for them. Elaine looked at Gavin, then back at me. I could see her thinking, see her weighing options, wondering if this was too good to be true. But Gavin was already moving, already taking control, already making it look like this was his idea. He stood up, came around the table, put his hand on my shoulder like we were brothers, like he actually gave a damn. He told me I was doing the right thing. the brave thing, that it took real courage to protect your family like this, that most men would be too proud, too stubborn. But I was putting Elaine first, and that made me a good man. The words came out smooth. Practice. The same voice he probably used to sell insurance policies and investment portfolios. The voice that made people trust him, believe him, sign things. Then he turned to Elaine, told her to call her lawyer right now. Not tomorrow, not this afternoon. Now, told her this was time sensitive, that we needed to get ahead of the legal action before the lawsuit was officially filed. He pulled out his phone, started looking up divorce attorneys, making notes, acting like a man taking charge of a crisis, protecting his client, being professional. Elaine watched him, then looked at me. She asked if I was sure, if this was really what I wanted. I nodded, didn't trust myself to say too much, just told her I was sure, that I'd made my decision, that I wanted her to be okay even if I wasn't. Her eyes got shiny, tears maybe, or maybe just a reflection from the kitchen light. Hard to tell, hard to care. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand, told me she'd always remember this, that I was doing something incredibly selfless. I squeezed back, let my hand shake a little, let her think I was falling apart, and then I dropped my head, stared at the table, let my shoulders slump forward, not because I was broken, because I was trying not to smile. Behind a curtain of my messy hair, my lips twitched, just slightly, just enough that if anyone had been looking closely they would have seen it. But nobody was looking at me anymore. Gavin was on his phone, already calling attorneys, already pushing this forward, making it happen fast before I could change my mind, before I could realize what I was giving away. Elaine was crying, real tears now, whether from guilt or greed or relief, I couldn't tell, didn't matter. And I sat there, head down, shoulders shaking like I was sobbing. But I wasn't sobbing. I was laughing, silently, carefully, the kind of laugh that happens when you realize your plan is working better than you'd even hoped. When you realize that the people trying to rob you are so focused on the prize that they can't see the trap closing around them. Gavin hung up the phone, told us he'd found an attorney who could see us today. Emergency appointment, 1 p.m. He'd make sure Elaine got there. Make sure everything was handled properly. He looked at me, asked if I wanted him to come along, for moral support. I lifted my head, made sure my eyes looked red, made sure I looked grateful, broken but grateful. I told him no, said this was something Elaine and I needed to do ourselves. One last thing together before we went our separate ways. He nodded, understanding, compassionate. What a guy. Elaine was already on her phone, already texting her lawyer, already setting things in motion. She was moving fast now, efficient, like she'd been waiting for this moment, and was relieved it was finally here. Gavin gathered his papers, his laptop, his calculator, told Elaine he'd check in with her later, make sure everything went smoothly, handle any financial questions that came up. As he walked past me toward the door, he stopped, put his hand on my shoulder again. He told me I was doing the right thing, that in times of crisis, real character shows through, that I was showing real character. I looked up at him, his perfect teeth, his perfect hair, his perfect confidence, and I told him he had no idea. He smiled, thought I meant he had no idea how hard this was for me. He had no idea how right he was. The door closed behind him. The Lexus pulled out of the driveway, and I sat there at my kitchen table with my wife, who thought she was about to get everything. The envelope with the fake lawsuit sat between us. 42 hours until the lottery ticket expired, and both of us were counting down to very different endings. The attorney's office smelled like leather and old money. That specific scent you only get in places where people argue about six-figure sums while sitting in chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Dark wood paneling, diplomas on the walls, a view of downtown through windows, so clean they looked like they weren't even there. Elaine's lawyer was a woman named Patricia Morton, mid-50s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of attorney who charged $400 an hour and made you feel like you were getting a bargain. She'd cleared her afternoon schedule for us. Emergency divorce. Rush job. Elaine had apparently been very persuasive on the phone. Or maybe it was Gavin who'd been persuasive. He was sitting in the corner of the office, pretending to check his phone, but really watching everything like a hawk. Moral support. He'd called it. Making sure things went smoothly. Making sure I actually went through with it. More like, it was Thursday, 1 p.m., just like Gavin had arranged. 18 hours until the lottery ticket expired. Patricia had the paperwork spread across her desk. A divorce settlement agreement that she'd apparently drafted in record time. I wondered how much of it Gavin had dictated to her over the phone. How many of his suggestions were buried in the legal terminology. She walked us through it page by page. Her voice was professional, detached, like she was reading a grocery list instead of dismantling a 25-year marriage. The house goes to Elaine. The joint bank account goes to Elaine. The car, the furniture, the savings bond my mother left me when she died. All to Elaine. I kept my head down, nodded at the appropriate moments, played the part of the broken man, accepting his fate. Then Patricia got to page 7, section 12, and I felt my heart rate kick up a notch. She read it out loud, said that both parties agreed to completely waive any and all claims to assets, income, windfalls, lottery winnings, inheritances, or any other financial gains obtained or discovered by the other party after the signing of this agreement. Said it was to ensure complete financial separation and protect both parties from future liability. Lottery winnings. Right there in black and white. Gavin had made sure those exact words were in the document. Probably thought he was being thorough, covering all the bases, making absolutely certain that if I somehow stumbled into money later, Elaine would be protected, that he would be protected. What he'd actually done was hand me the keys to the kingdom. Patricia asked if we understood the terms, if we had any questions. Elaine nodded immediately, said she understood, said it all seemed fair given the circumstances. Gavin was still watching me from the corner. His eyes were locked on my face, waiting, making sure I didn't back out. I picked up the pen. It was heavy, expensive, the kind of pen that feels important in your hand, the kind of pen that signs documents that change lives. I held it over the signature line, and I hesitated, not because I was actually having second thoughts, but because I needed them to think I was, needed one final moment of doubt, one last chance for them to show me who they really were. I looked up at Elaine. She was sitting across from me. Same woman I'd met at that 4th of July barbecue 26 years ago. Same eyes, same smile, different person entirely. I said her name, softly, like I was testing whether she'd even respond to it anymore. She looked at me, waiting. I told her maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe I could fight the lawsuit, find another attorney, negotiate a settlement. We'd been married 25 years. Didn't that count for something? Didn't we owe it to ourselves to try? For about 3 seconds, I saw something flicker across her face, something that might have been guilt, or maybe just irritation that I was complicating things. Then Gavin leaned forward in his chair, and Elaine's face changed, hardened, like a door slamming shut. She said no, said it loud enough that Patricia looked up from her notes, said she wasn't going down with my sinking ship, said she'd spent 25 years watching me barely scrape by as an electrician, while other men, smarter men, built real wealth. Said she wasn't going to spend the next 25 years paying off my debts because I cut corners on some commercial job. She said I'd always been a disappointment, always been mediocre, always been exactly what I looked like, a blue-collar worker with dirty hands and no ambition. She said she deserved better. The room went quiet. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Patricia looked uncomfortable, like she'd witnessed something she wished she hadn't, like she'd accidentally walked in on a private moment that should have stayed private. Gavin was nodding along, encouraging, supportive. His hand moved like he was about to reach out and touch Elaine's shoulder, but stopped himself because we were in a lawyer's office, and that would have been too obvious. And I sat there, pen in hand, and I felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not hurt, not betrayal. Just a cold, clear certainty that I'd made the right decision, That everything I'd done over the past 48 hours was justified. That these two people deserved exactly what was coming to them. I lowered my head, let my shoulders shake a little, made the appropriate defeated sounds. Then I signed the papers. Page 7, Section 12, Mark Sullivan, in shaky handwriting that looked like it came from a man whose world was ending. Elaine signed next. Her signature was neat, confident, relieved. Patricia notarized everything, stamped it, filed it, told us the judge had agreed to an emergency Zoom hearing at 4 p.m. to finalize everything. Said we were lucky to get a spot. Said most divorces took months, but given the urgent financial circumstances, His Honor had made an exception. 4 p.m., Thursday, 16 hours until the ticket expired. We all filed into the conference room. Patricia set up her laptop, connected to the court system. A judge appeared on screen. Older guy, gray hair, reading glasses. He looked tired, like he'd been doing these hearings all day and we were just another couple on a long list of broken promises. He asked if we both understood the terms of the agreement, if we were signing of our own free will, if we had any objections or concerns. Elaine said no, said she understood everything, said she wanted to move forward. I said no, said the same things, used the same defeated tone. The judge asked if we'd made provision for division of property. Patricia confirmed that we had, said everything was outlined in the settlement agreement, said both parties had waived all future claims to each other's assets and income. The judge nodded. He probably heard this same speech 1,000 times, probably had it memorized. He declared that the marriage between Mark Sullivan and Elaine Sullivan was hereby dissolved, that all terms of the settlement agreement were binding and enforceable, that we were legally divorced as of this moment. Thursday, November 21st, at 4:55 p.m. 4:55 p.m. The timestamp appeared on the official divorce decree that Patricia printed out 60 seconds later. Both copies, one for Elaine, one for me. I folded mine carefully, put it in my jacket pocket, next to my wallet, next to the business card from the garage where I'd hidden the lottery ticket, inside a capacitor marked danger. Everything I owned was now in that jacket pocket. Everything they thought they owned was in Elaine's designer handbag. We walked out of the building together. Not together, just happening to leave at the same time. Elaine and Gavin were talking in low voices, planning something. Probably where to celebrate. Probably how fast they could move his things into my house. Their house now. I stopped on the sidewalk. Told them I needed to go pick up my tools from the garage. Said I'd be out of their hair by tomorrow. Elaine looked at me with something that might have been pity, might have been contempt. Hard to tell. Didn't matter. She told me to take whatever I needed. Said she didn't want any of my work stuff anyway. Generous of her. Gavin shook my hand. Told me I'd done the right thing. Told me that sometimes in life you have to make hard choices. Told me that I'd handled this with real dignity. I thanked him. Told him he'd been a big help through all this. Told him I couldn't have made these decisions without his guidance. Every word was true, just not in the way he thought. They got into Gavin's Lexus. Drove off toward my old house. Their house. Probably planning to open a bottle of wine. Toast their victory. Maybe even call a real estate agent to see what the place was worth now that it was free and clear. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching taillights disappear around a corner. Then I walked to my truck. The old F-150 that Elaine had always complained about. Too loud, too dirty, too embarrassing to be seen in when they went anywhere nice. It was the only thing she hadn't wanted. It was the only thing I needed. I drove back to the house. My old house. The place I'd rewired 3 years ago. The place where I'd installed that smart home system. The place where I'd spent 25 years building a life that turned out to be built on sand. Gavin's Lexus was in the driveway. Lights were on inside. I could see shadows moving past the windows. Could hear music. Laughter. They were celebrating. I pulled around back. Used the side door to garage. My key still worked. For now. Probably be changed by tomorrow. The garage was exactly how I'd left it. Tools on the workbench. Wire spools hanging on the wall. And in the back corner, covered in dust and warning labels, the capacitor. I disconnected it from the power source it was never actually connected to. Picked it up, 30 pounds of metal and ceramic and one lottery ticket, worth $184 million. It was heavy, awkward, exactly the kind of thing you'd expect an electrician to take with him when he moved out. I carried it to my truck, put it in the passenger seat, buckled it in like it was a person. Then I stood there in the driveway, looking at the house. The lights in the kitchen were on. I could see Elaine and Gavin through the window. They were opening champagne. The bottle popped. Foam spilled over. They were laughing, toasting, to their future, to their freedom, to getting everything they wanted. I watched them for a minute. Two people who thought they'd won, who thought they'd played me perfectly, who thought they were the smartest people in the room. And I whispered two words into the November air, "To your health." Then I got in my truck and drove away from that house for the last time. Friday morning, 9 a.m., the state lottery office opened at 8. I'd been sitting in the parking lot since 7:30, watching other people come and go, wondering how many of them were winners, how many were just checking tickets that would turn out to be nothing. 16 hours ago, I'd been married, had a house, had a life that looked normal from the outside, even if it was rotten on the inside. Now I had a truck, a capacitor, and a piece of paper that said I was legally divorced, and a lottery ticket that expired in 8 hours. I waited until 9, gave the office staff time to get settled, finish their coffee, boot up their computers. I didn't want to be the crazy guy who rushed in the second the doors opened looking desperate. I wanted to look calm, collected, like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The office was smaller than I expected, just a couple of desks. Some posters on the walls showing previous winners holding giant checks and smiling like they'd just won the lottery, which technically they had. A woman at the front desk looked up when I walked in, mid-40s, glasses, name tag that said Sharon. She smiled that professional customer service smile. She asked if I needed help. I told her I wanted to claim a winning ticket. She probably heard that 100 times a day from people who'd won $20 on a scratch-off. But something in my voice made her look twice. Maybe it was how calm I sounded. Maybe it was a capacitor I was carrying under one arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. She asked me to have a seat, said someone would be with me in a moment. I sat down, put the capacitor on the chair next to me. A couple other people in the waiting area looked at it, looked at me, probably wondering why someone was bringing electrical equipment to the lottery office. Let them wonder. 5 minutes later, a guy in a shirt and tie came out, introduced himself as Daniel, assistant director of prize claims. He shook my hand and led me back to a private office. He asked to see the ticket. I unscrewed the maintenance panel on the capacitor, reached inside, pulled out the lottery ticket like I was pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It was wrinkled, faded, 6 months old. Looked like something you'd find in a junk drawer and throw away without checking. I handed it to him. Daniel scanned it. His computer made a sound. Not a beep, more like a musical note. The kind of sound that means something good just happened. His eyes went wide. He looked at the ticket, then at me, then back at the ticket. He excused himself, said he needed to verify something. Left me sitting there in his office staring at motivational posters about responsible gambling and financial planning. 10 minutes later, he came back with 2 other people, a woman with a clipboard, a man with a camera, both of them looking at me like I just walked on water. Daniel sat down, cleared his throat, told me that the ticket was valid, that I'd won the jackpot from the drawing 6 months ago, $184 million before taxes. Then he looked at his watch, looked back at me, said I'd cut it pretty close, said the ticket would have expired at 5 p.m. today. Another 8 hours, and all that money would have gone back into the prize pool. I told him I'd been waiting for the right moment. He laughed, thought I was joking, asked if I wanted the lump sum or the annuity. I told him lump sum, $112 million after taxes, all at once. Put in a trust account that nobody could touch, nobody could claim. Nobody could take in a divorce settlement because the divorce was final and the ticket was claimed after the marriage ended. Clean, legal, airtight. Daniel started the paperwork. The woman with the clipboard asked questions. Date of birth, social security number, current address. I gave her my brother's address in Vermont. Said I'd be staying with him for a while. Getting my life back together after a rough patch. Not a lie, not the whole truth. Just enough truth to be believable. They took my picture, asked me to hold a giant ceremonial check made out for $184 million. Asked if they could use my name in a press release. I told them to wait until Monday. Said I needed a few days to get my affairs in order. Notify family. Make arrangements. They agreed. Said Monday they'd announced that a local resident had claimed the jackpot from 6 months ago in the nick of time. By Monday, I'd be 3 states away. By Monday, Elaine would be watching TV. By Monday, her whole world would explode. I walked out of that lottery office at 11 a.m. on Friday with a cashier's check for $112 million in my jacket pocket and a stamped document confirming my claim. The capacitor stayed in their office. They wanted to take pictures of it. Thought it was quirky. The guy who hid his winning ticket in electrical equipment. Made for a good human interest story. I told them to keep it. Said I didn't need it anymore. I drove north. Didn't go back to town. Didn't drive past the house. Just pointed the truck toward the state line and kept going. I had nowhere to be. Nothing to do. Just miles of highway and the rest of my life stretching out in front of me like an open road. For the first time in 25 years, I felt free. Monday morning came the way Monday mornings always do. Inevitable. Unavoidable. The weekend ends and reality comes back, whether you're ready or not. I was in a motel room in New Hampshire when the news broke, sitting in a chair that had probably been there since 1987, drinking coffee from a pot that barely worked, watching the local news because I had nothing better to do. The anchor was a young woman with perfect hair and a smile that looked painted on. She was reading from a teleprompter, talking about local headlines, weather, sports, traffic. Then she said something about a lottery winner. I turned up the volume. Local man claims $184 million jackpot in the nick of time. The winning ticket was purchased 6 months ago and nearly expired unclaimed. The winner, Mark Sullivan of Oakdale, chose to remain private, but released a statement thanking the Lottery Commission and saying he planned to use the money to support his community and help others. They showed a picture. Not a good one. Some old snapshot from a job site that must have been on file somewhere. Me in a work shirt. Dirty hands. Squinting at the camera like I didn't want my picture taken. Then they showed the date of purchase on the ticket. I watched the TV. Wondered if Elaine was watching too. Wondered if she'd put together yet. The date, our anniversary. The day she'd forgotten about dinner because she had a client meeting. She'd know. She'd know it was her ticket as much as mine. Community property. Bought during the marriage. Should have been split 50-50 in the divorce. Except it wasn't. Because she'd signed a document that waived all claims to lottery winnings discovered after the divorce. My phone rang 10 minutes later. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again. Different number. Still didn't answer. 6 more calls. Then voicemail started piling up. I listened to one. It was Elaine. She was crying, screaming, saying I'd stolen from her, saying she'd take me to court, saying I'd pay for this. I deleted it. Gavin left a message too. He was calmer, more calculated. Said we should talk. Said maybe we could work something out. Said there were legal options we should discuss. I deleted that one too. Then I blocked both numbers. Changed my phone. Changed my email. Became someone new. The lawsuit came 3 weeks later. I was expecting it. Had a lawyer waiting. A real lawyer. Not someone Gavin had recommended. Not someone who charged by the hour and told you what you wanted to hear. Someone who specialized in lottery law. Someone who'd handled cases like this before. We met in his office. He was an older guy, gray beard, suspenders, the kind of lawyer who looked like he'd stepped out of a John Grisham novel. He read through Elaine's complaint, smiled, looked up at me. He said she didn't have a case. Said the divorce decree was ironclad. Said the waiver of assets was specific, explicit, unambiguous. He said we'd win. The hearing was 4 weeks after that. I flew back, walked into a courtroom that smelled like old wood and older arguments. Elaine was sitting at the plaintiff's table with her attorney. Different attorney now. Patricia had apparently declined to take this case. Smart woman. Gavin wasn't there. I'd heard through the grapevine that he'd left town, disappeared, went on a business trip, and never came back. Guess he figured out that Elaine without money wasn't worth sticking around for. Guess his love had limits after all. The judge was the same one who presided over our divorce on Zoom. He recognized us. I could see it in his eyes. Probably didn't get many cases where the same couple came back a month later fighting over lottery millions. Elaine's attorney stood up, made his argument, said the ticket was purchased during the marriage, said it was community property, said the divorce settlement should be voided because there was fraud, because I'd hidden assets, because I manipulated the proceedings. He talked for 20 minutes, used big words, made passionate gestures, put on a good show. My attorney stood up, didn't make speeches, didn't gesture, just opened a folder and read from the divorce decree. Page 7, Section 12, the exact paragraph that Gavin had insisted on including, the paragraph that waived all claims to lottery winnings. He pointed out that the ticket was claimed after the divorce was final, after the marriage was dissolved, after all legal ties were severed, that according to the terms Elaine herself had agreed to, she had no claim, none, zero. The judge listened, read through the documents himself, took his time. When he finally looked up, his face was unreadable. He asked Elaine's attorney if his client had signed the divorce decree voluntarily, if she'd been represented by counsel, if she'd understood the terms. The attorney said yes to all three. The judge asked if there was any evidence of coercion or fraud during the divorce proceedings. The attorney said no, because there wasn't. I'd never lied, never forced anything, just let them be exactly who they were. Let their greed write the terms of their own destruction. The judge addressed Elaine directly, asked her if she understood what she'd signed, if she wanted the divorce to go through quickly, if she'd agreed to waive claims to future assets in order to protect herself from future liabilities. Elaine said yes, said it had seemed necessary at the time, said she'd been protecting herself from a lawsuit that turned out to be fake. The judge asked if she'd verified the lawsuit, if she consulted with her own legal counsel about it, if she'd done any due diligence before agreeing to divorce terms. Silence, because she hadn't. She'd just seen an opportunity and grabbed it, hadn't questioned, hadn't checked, had just assumed she was getting everything and I was getting nothing. The judge closed the folder, looked at both of us, said something I'll never forget. He said that you can't change the rules of the game after the final whistle blows. That Elaine had wanted a clean separation from my liabilities, so she'd agreed to separate from my assets too, that she'd made her choice with full knowledge and consent, that the law was clear, that the waiver was binding. Case dismissed. Elaine's attorney tried to appeal. It got rejected. Tried again. Rejected again. Eventually they gave up. Too expensive to keep fighting a case they were never going to win. I walked out of that courtroom with everything I'd walked in with. $112 million. My freedom, my dignity, my life. I didn't become one of those lottery winners you read about. The ones who buy mansions and sports cars and go bankrupt in 3 years. The ones who end up more miserable than they started. I bought a house. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms on a lake in Maine. Place where you can see stars at night and hear water lapping against the dock. Place where nobody knows who you are or cares how much money you have. I bought a boat. Small fishing boat. Nothing that would impress anyone. Just something to take out in the morning when the water's calm and the fish are biting. I started a foundation. Free electrical training for people who couldn't afford trade school. Scholarship for kids who wanted to learn a real skill. Help for families who couldn't pay their electric bills. The kind of stuff that actually matters. And sometimes, usually in the evening when the sun's going down and the lake's turning gold, I sit in that boat with fishing rod, and I think about Elaine and Gavin. Wonder where they are. Wonder if they ever think about me. Wonder if they understand what happened. Probably not. Probably still think I somehow cheated them. Probably still don't see how they cheated themselves. I think about that fake lawsuit, that demand letter I wrote in my garage at 2 a.m. How a piece of fiction became more real than the truth. How their greed made them believe something that wasn't there because they wanted so badly to believe it. I think about Gavin insisting on that waiver clause, making sure it was specific, making sure it covered lottery winnings. Thought he was being smart. Thought he was protecting their future. Never occurred to him he was destroying it. People always say poker's about the cards, about getting lucky, about hoping the river turns in your favor. That's not poker. That's gambling. Poker is about reading people, about knowing when they're bluffing, about letting them think they're winning right up until the moment they lose everything. Poker is about patience, about waiting for the right moment, about knowing when to fold, when to call, and when to go all in. Poker's about making your opponent beat themselves. I caught a fish that evening. Nice base. Maybe 3 pounds. Fought hard. Made me work for it. I pulled it up, held it for a second, watched it twist and turn in the fading light. Then I let it go, watched it disappear back into the water, back to its life. Free. Sometimes the best part of winning isn't what you get. It's what you finally get to walk away from. The sun set. The lake went quiet. And I sat there in my boat, holding a fishing rod, living a life I'd built from nothing. A life that was finally completely mine. And somewhere 3 states away, in a house with a mortgage they could barely afford, Elaine and whatever was left of her dreams were learning the same lesson I'd learned 25 years too late. That refrigerator was right. The one that hummed too loud and ate up all the power. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to cut the power completely, let it die, and build something new from scratch. I cast my line back into the water, watched the ripples spread out in perfect circles, watched them fade into nothing, and I smiled, because I knew something they'd never understand. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well. It's being free. It's sitting in a boat on a quiet lake with nothing to prove and nobody to impress. It's knowing that you won, not because you destroyed them, but because you saved yourself. And that's worth more than all the lottery money in the world.